What's up, guys? Welcome back, brew tubers and wanderers of YouTube. Welcome to the Blue Trouser Brewery. I am Owen and we're doing another beer review. This time we're trying some beers from John Denton, or otherwise known as Jonny Apples. Johnny is a lovely fellow, very popular YouTuber. His channel is growing, which is great to see, and he was kind enough to send me 3 beers. I think I've drunk one of them already. I can't quite recall what that was. I apologise, John, but tonight I'm going to be trying a American wit beer. So kind of unusual beer. This is the Allagash White clone, and also the Little Vienna. So I think the Little Vienna was a group live brew day beer. I can't recall which brewery it is, but it's a clone beer. The Allagash White is quite a famous American wit beer from a brewery called Allagash. And I believe this was a kit that John got from the malt miller, so it's all grain. So I'll give you a bit of the info from the bottle. So this was brewed on the 9th of March, bottled 1st of April, this is 2021. It's from the keg. The grain is lager malt, wheat malt, dextrin, flaked oats and flaked wheat. And there is some additions of coriander, bitter orange and grains of paradise, which apparently is the secret ingredient, which they don't otherwise put on the recipe when they have published it in the past. So this is hopped with nugget, crystal and SARS, and John's used Imperial B44 Whiteout, which is a wit beer strain, or a Belgian strain, coming in at 17 IBUs. So there's a little bit of backstory actually to this particular beer and my association with it, because unbeknown to John and myself, we were both actually brewing this very same clone. I missed out on a kit from the malt miller because they were out of stock of the Imperial yeast. So what I decided to do was, I didn't quite have the full recipe, but I had a few articles here and there, and I kind of tried to piece it together, bought the ingredients I didn't have, and I ended up using a slightly different yeast. I used a mobile fermentum one called White Boots or White Wellies or something weird like that. Now, I'm kind of really interested to try this beer because I know how mine has been tasting. I don't actually think I have any left now. I've bottled a lot of it for beer mail, but it ended up coming out very, very clear, which is a bit odd for a wit beer. So I'm excited to see basically how much better Johnny's is going to be than mine. So I'm going to give it a little sniffy. Sniffy? Don't know. So this is really fresh on the nose. You're picking up the coriander and the orange. I'm not picking up a huge yeast contribution where mine, you picked up quite a bit of a Belgian vibe going on. You could smell the esters of the yeast. Picking up just a little bit there, but it smells like a really lovely fresh wit beer. So that's all I'm getting on the nose. Cheers, John. Thank you for sending me the beers, and yeah, very much appreciated. Thank you, sir. Oh, that is good. So, lovely, lovely head on this beer. Sticking around, great lacing on the glass there. It's got some haze. It's not super hazy, but definitely in the right range there. Lovely light golden colour. It's actually coming out much darker on the camera than actually what it is. But on the flavour, it's just you've got a lovely freshness to the beer. You're picking up probably a slightly stronger clove character from the yeast than perhaps like any bubblegum or banana. But you pick up the orange. It's a really lovely full mouthfeel from the beer, just with a little bit of extra carbonation. And being obviously a wheat beer, it's going to have quite a full body. Yeah, that is that is really, really nice, Johnny. I think that is almost how I envisaged how I wanted my beer to come out. In reality, looking back at the recipe, John was kind enough to actually send me a copy of the actual recipe, and I didn't use enough flaked adjuncts like the wheat and the oats, and I don't think I just generally used enough wheat malt in there. And I also ended up adding clarity firm to it, which was a really dumb idea. I don't know why I did that. It was a bit of a mistake, and it just cleared. It was like absolutely crystal clear. Not that it really affected the flavour, but mine came out very much more estery, way more Belgian, and probably a bit too estery, to be honest. It was a little bit imbalanced. It wasn't a terrible beer by any means, but Johnny, I think you've done that some justice. That's very, very nice. Thank you. So the second beer I'm going to be reviewing is the Little Vienna. It's pretty lively as I open the bottle. So I am expecting a copperish colour, pretty crisp lager with some kind of hints of toast and probably crystal malt. So this says a Vienna lager-ish, so I'm not quite sure what the ish is, maybe pressure fermented. He fermented this with 3470, pretty classic, which does react pretty well under pressure, so perhaps that's what he meant by ish. Grain is Vienna Pilsner, Munich Medium Crystal, and Carapils, and interestingly, the hops, which probably makes this slightly unusual in its recipe, is it's bittered with Simcoe, and then hopped with Nelson, Sauvin, and Sars. So you've got a kind of traditional Sars finishing hop there in terms of sort of flavour aroma, but interestingly some Nelson in there just to kind of mix things up a little bit. He even listed the Bugu at 1.07, which is actually relatively high. The IBU's at 38 for a 4.3% beer. So I'm expecting this to have a reasonably good bite, I think. So enough talking about the recipe. Let's give it a little smell. Yeah, so you're getting like a very malty, immediately a quite sweet malty aroma. I'm picking up like maybe a little bit of a buttery thing on there. Now I'm not sure if that's the combination of the hops and the malt. Smells bready. There's definitely a sweetness from the crystal malt in terms of colour. Really, really nice colour. It's got nice clarity to it. It's not super clear, but it's certainly not far off. And but the colour is absolutely gorgeous. Decent head on it, so I'm going to tuck in. So yeah, there's not an outrageous bitterness. It has got quite a nice assertive bitterness to it, but that bitterness is quite rounded. It's kind of an interesting choice to bitter with Simcoe. Not something I think I've done before, but it seems to really work, and I think it's quite a fruity lager. It has got a nice crisp finish to it. So there's a lot going on with that beer, but it's very refreshing, very lively. That bitterness kind of, after you first take a sip and you swallow, and then it kind of just cuts through. But I could definitely see this being like a nice barbecue beer, like a nice summer kind of beer. Pretty thirst quenching, because it's got that kind of crispness, the dryness. It's got a little bit of thing going on with the malt, and it's quite fruity. So it's a decent beer. So I was picking up that buttery thing on the nose, but I'm not picking that up in the flavour. And I think that's just the sweetness of the malt, as I say, combined with the fruitiness of the hops. I'm not really getting that buttery thing on the aroma now. Yeah, I really like this beer. I think it's got something to it in terms of its malt complexity. There's a little bit of complexity there in terms of the malt over just a regular lager. The hop combination is really interesting. That's playing nicely in terms of the overall style, and that kind of slightly complex, sweet kind of malt contribution. Obviously, putting Simcoe and Nelson into what is a classic lager style, you might be kind of questioning that decision, right? But it adds a different dimension to the beer, and it's not in any way unpleasant. It's just different. It's a take on the style, and I think it actually works really nicely. You take a sip, you get this kind of up front, not overly sweet, but impression of sweetness with the malt, and then it heads off into a tasty thing, disappears quite quickly into just a nice rounded sort of fruity hop flavour, which gives way to quite a strong bitterness. It's certainly not astringent, but like a bitterness that kind of hangs around and kind of coats your tongue a little bit. It's almost a little bit like a West Coast IPA. It's got that kind of quite assertive, lingering bitterness to it. Yeah, it's a nice beer, Jonny. So I'm going to finish that one off at my own leisure, and thanks again, Jonny, for sending me the beers, and I'll see you all later.